Now YouTube is on. OBS sometimes F me up. Yeah, so Gabriel Oliveira da Silva is the sound designer. He's gonna join us in a bit because I want to introduce you guys to Gabriel Oliveira and of course show a little bit of sounds and project and what changed, what's not, and all of that pretty cool stuff. May we see the birdie? I don't really have a camera, but BB will send a picture of the bird on the chat. Mas só foto do pássaro. Foto do pássaro, não a minha cara, né? How's everybody doing on this Friday? So as you know, we're gonna jump from YouTube to Discord, Discord from YouTube. So if you're watching this on both platforms, just ask questions on one of them. Don't ask them on both. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can ask the questions there. If you're watching it from Discord, you can ask the questions on Discord. For newer players or newer viewers and old viewers, of course. Hello, Volor. So, a few things. We have a actual musician who volunteered to make the soundtrack of the game, which I'm still waiting to see his, work. He's an actual, like, singer and producer. It's not really, those known ones, but he does, Nordic music and stuff like that. So they volunteered and he's gonna do it for free. Alright. So so when it comes to reading questions, keep in mind that I have the YouTube and I have the Discord. I'm gonna mainly focus on Discord and then jump onto YouTube. So if I don't talk like immediately, it's because I'm reading first the Discord questions. So before we start, anybody got any questions? Any questions, new or old? Any questions that you might be like, oh, this was a good idea to ask Kato? Feel free to do now. And I'm going to show you guys a tiny bit of what we done, because milestone 1 and milestone 2 are ready. And now we're gonna jump to milestone 3 and milestone 4, and as you know, those will be locked for Patreon. And for those of you who play on Steam Deck, our beautiful coder Jar, he compiled and made it a build, and you can play it with 60 FPS on your Steam Deck. When is multiplayer starting? Multiplayer will only start after probably milestone 5 or 6, or when I think it's on a good place to start making a multiplayer. Because of course, the reason why we haven't gone into multiplayer, it's because we need the funding and support of the community, because that will take us extra work. Once we are in a stable position, we can jump into multiplayer. And once multiplayer, you know, gets on its track, you can expect probably a Steam page for the game. If Kickstarter goes well, it can come to consoles, but I have to remind you that first is PC the priority, and then if things go well, yes, consoles are definitely the second. So, recap of milestones. So the recap of milestone are: milestone 1 is the improve flight mechanic, improve aim system, and then we have grab and dragging, which are those are not yet implemented because we still need an animations, and we decide to wait for it until we have multiplayer because we have to see how it will play out to grab and drag stuff. Milestone 2 is the status effect, which some of you already know about the status effects, but now they are really implemented into the game, into the character. The scent system and eat and drink. So those are done. Sounds pretty basic, but those are done. And then we have milestone 3 and 4. But keep in mind that things can change. So milestone 3 will be dynamic weather, a simple diet system, and AI behavior, which is attack, run, hide, eat, and drink. But like I said, keep in mind that these may change. Milestone 4 is a tab menu or a tab information. So if you press tab, it will show you the information about your dragon. So, you know, HP, growth stage, you know, diet and stuff like that. And then we have dismembering for AI, and then we have like the ability to change different attacks. So as you know, dragons will have different attacks: tail swipe, bite, spit fire, grab. So you will have ability to do that by holding R. But keep in mind that some of these might change because of priorities. So let me just put this a tiny bit low. But what stage is the game's own dragon coming in, or is that not coming in yet when you guys get the money? So we cannot make models without money, and like I said, models cost a lot of money. So the two things that cost a lot is models and its animations. Animations being the first one, and funny enough, models being the second one. But you can find people that can do models for 500. Some people might do it for 800. Some people might do it for 1,000, 10,000, 5,000, depending on how good the artist is. So if we are doing realism or realistic models, it will cost us a tiny bit. So for animations, it will depend on the animator itself. But for example, for 5 animations, I'm paying $200, or 4 animations. I think it's 4 or 5 animations, so it's almost $40 per animation. So that's only 5 animations, but we still have ground movement, you know, grabbing, you know, eating and drinking, and the vocals and stuff like that. So you can tell that those are gonna cost around 1,000 or more. And the other issue is it's hard and really hard to find animators that can actually animate dragons and creatures, because a lot of the animators that I've been trying to get, they are only good at making humans animations or maybe weapons animations like reloads and shooting. We don't want that. We want people who know how to make smooth animations, and those are difficult to find and expensive. So currently I am waiting, or maybe on Monday, if I'm not mistaken, Monday perhaps. Monday we will have, or I will have, a preview of the flying system that will be improved by one of the animators, because the old animator that we had, unfortunately, she had a lot to do. So although she's a good animator and she's focused on creatures and dragons animations, she has college, she has exams, she has other you know, freelance jobs, so she doesn't really have time, which I have to respect. And once she's available, then we can, you know, talk again. But animations are really expensive, and dragon models are also expensive, so we can't really do anything without the animations. So for sound, for example, we need to have animations to make the sound designs for the dragon. We also need it for immersive stuff and yada yada yada. But I do intend on, once we launch our Patreon, if possible, the first, probably the first ever donation, if we reach it, we are going to have a European dragon. So like I said, multiplayer, we'll have a wyvern and it will have a European dragon. I already talked with a sculptor and a lot of 3D modelers, and I found one that is kind of affordable. So, and he does pretty cool models or animals, creatures. So that's something that will only come later on, and we have talked about, me and Jar talked about the releasing the build. So the current build I would love to release, but it will only depend on popular demand, because I think that's how it's gonna work. If majority of you guys want to play the build how it currently is, how I'm gonna show you, which nothing really changed that much, but you can. But because a few of the animations, you know, needs to be tweaked, you know, Jar said that it's for the best for us to wait until we have all of the animations set up, and then we can launch the build for you guys to try it out for free, and then lock everything for the Patreon access, which we still have to work on the Patreon, you know, rewards and stuff like that, and it will take a little bit time, because that's not really the priority. So we're gonna I do want to show how the game is right now. A lot of you won't really notice that much of a difference, so I'll be honest, but there were a little bit of tweaking when it comes to sound. So we had like 3 sounds that Gabrielle did. I don't know if Jar mixed them or not, but we will shall see. So currently, a lot of this, and I'm gonna take off the music because if you want to kind of hear the sound. So one thing that I will do that I forgot, it's not really activated, is to show FPS so you guys can have an idea on how FPS is. But keep in mind that this is on single player. But you can play on your Steam Deck if you guys have Steam Deck with at least 68 frames per second. I do want to see. So currently everything is on cinematic. And Jar added the option for you guys to try out some of the settings. So you can press 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2 and 3 on your keypad, which it will kind of change and will tell you how the graphics are. So this is low with upscaling and you will get 120. This is high with TAA. This is high with a upscaling. But I do prefer high with TAA. I don't really like upscaling, but so a recap as always, because a lot of people might see this live stream. In this game, you won't be able to have a 360-degree view, so it's currently locked on a 45 degrees, so you can't really look more than this. So if you want to look behind you, you have to kind of turn around until you can kind of see with the camera. This is to avoid exploiting in third person, but eventually I will add a feature that by holding Alt you can kind of move and have a free look ability, so you can look 360 degrees eventually. But for now it's locked at 45 degrees. There's not really much when it comes to walking and doing stuff on the ground, because this will only get worked on the next few patches or milestones. For now you can actually eat and drink. So there's a little puddle of water. As you can see, our water bar is 70 or 80%. So if you press E, if you can kind of get it right, there you go. It does this animation, which is the bite, and you'll see that our water is fully replenished. On the right side you have the status for everybody that haven't seen it. You're gonna have poison, venom, freezing, stun, dazed, unconscious, fracture, bleeding, weight, burn, fire, and oxygen, and illness. And then you have sleep, which sleep will be changed to energy, so you're gonna have energy and stamina. And then you're gonna have food and water. Pretty basic stuff. So yeah, oxygen is spelled wrong because, you know, the person who was doing all of the coding was not really fluent on English. So. As for the sound, now you can kind of hear, but we still need to put it on loop probably. But the sound itself, it's more of a forest type with birds chirping. So Gabriel did this, and you might notice that there's random growls and random sounds coming out from time to time. You will probably hear like footsteps or random growls, and this is from what I've understood, this is Jar playing with the sound to try and make it so it echoes. So if you're in a mountain like this, so that if you roar or do anything, the sound can kind of travel. So that's what you're hearing in the background. Yes, and it's all directional, so you can kind of hear where the sound is coming if you have headphones and the system that I don't recall. But overall, the flying animations, although it might look good, it will get a little bit of a improvement and rework, because I want the dragon to flap its wings more instead of just flying like this, as you guys saw. And if you press shift also, it should flap its wings more aggressively, but it's still not implemented. So sound system like the wind and ambient sound was all done by Gabriel. And not long we will have to kind of give the dragon itself some vocals. The webbing cloth type. So the thing about the webbing cloth type, it's not about us giving, it's about the animator. So that's why I need somebody that knows how to animate so that they can do the webbing cloth type on the wings. So it's not really something we can do it. We can add physics to the wings, but Jar says that that's really taxing when it comes to multiplayer. So we need to have kind of the animator to do that. So for the release on Steam, we'll only feel comfortable once we are in a state that I think, for once, you know, it's playable on multiplayer. Second of all, it's when we have the animations and PvE elements working, and also if things go really well, you know, the release of the European Dragon. Because I only wanted to put it on Steam once multiplayer is working and fully functioning. But the thing about the rig itself is that the rig is really well done, so you should be able to kind of give it a lot of webbing, you know, effect on the wings. But these are just the basic animations that came with the dragon. So the reason why I'm just focusing first on the flying, because I do think that the flying needs to feel and look good. And as you see, you know, 5 animations, $200. You know, it's a little bit of a stretch, but it's a sacrifice that I'm willing to take on my wallet. And also we have the fire, which I do think that the fire needs a little bit more of improvement. So I was talking to Jaren and I told him, well, you know how you kind of have the aim system? So if you look to the right, your camera goes to the right. If you look to the left, your camera switches to the left. I told him to add a system that it will make the default camera always to the right once you zoom out. So if you're on the left and if you zoom out, if you zoom in again, it should be on the right instead of on the left. So that's just basically, you know, something that you guys need to give him a feedback on them, and the tail will be adjusted. A lot of the few things will be adjusted because he wants to adjust a lot of the stuff, fix a lot of the bugs before actually, you know, giving you guys the build. But you will only get the build that I'm currently trying once we have the animations for it. So hello Gabriel.
Hi everyone.
So this is
Hello.
Gabriel.
Hey Kato.
Hello, this is
Nice to meet
Gabriel.
you.
Nice to meet you too. He's from Brazil.
I didn't know I could just enter in the
Fica
here
caseiro,
to
né?
talk. Yeah.
So
So hi everyone.
you can actually tell them how you plan on making like the dragon sounds, and how do you make the sound itself.
So for like creature sounds, I usually like to use voice, real voice from people, or sometimes from myself, or sometimes from uh like actors. I like to hire them to perform some grunts, some sounds like shouts and something like that, and then I can use them to do whatever crazy stuff, like transform them into with pitches, reverbs, and all sorts of effects to try to mimic the sounds of dragons. But the the funny thing is for monsters like dragons itself or other creatures that I worked before that are like big creatures and so on, we always use a lot of non-human elements, like for example metal stretching, you bending a metal sheet plate that gives that very high pitched sound, but when you pitch down the sound and get it very low, it sounds really good for some raw sounds or something like that. Just like Jurassic Park, for example. I like to do those types of stuff.
It's pretty nice because we're gonna need a few sounds for the calls. So it's gonna be, you know, the typical call number 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's aggressive calls, and it will be challenging because I do think a lot of people want their dragon to sound good when it comes to audio. Instead of being like "rawr," it'll be like "rrr," because you're big, and people want to feel
Yeah.
big and strong. And a lot of the things I do get inspired by is a lot. It's Game of Thrones, so some of the pretty cool sounds that they have there also seems cool. But I wouldn't never know that, you know, some of these sounds might be from actual people and humans.
Yeah,
Grunting.
it's the I think it's the best way to do because it's more sound more natural, sound more like some creature. And so, when you get a person that has a deep voice, a low a low tone in their voice, it's very good because it sounds very very great in the when you try to make it to sound like a dragon. But one thing I don't know, I didn't talk with you before, but there will be, you know, different voices for different dragon types or something like that.
Mm-hmm. They will,
Yeah,
because some will be big dragons, some will be medium dragons, you know. Some will be more
nice.
of aggressive dragons, so the sounds will have to be strong and scary. Some other dragons might not be as scary, so the sound will be kind of low pitch, you know. And I do want dragon sounds to kind of be unique instead of sometimes you have the typical dragon sounds, you know. You can try and make like a sound that sounds pretty eerie, nasty, that you never heard in your life, instead of sounding like almost a dinosaur, you know.
Yeah, I got it. I think
So
this can be a very fun adventure to try to make those different sounds, like different like personalities for each dragon voice.
so the idea is to have different voices for different stages. So as you progressing, you know, your voice will start as low pitch and then will go to high pitch, and you can kind of see the progress on the vocal. It will be nice to have that, yes. And we do intend on of a baby having a different sound. And also I do intend on having, like, for example, a big dragon which has a smooth sound, so you think that it's not really a big dragon when he makes a sound. So people might think, oh, it's just a small dragon, and then like, you come face to face and it's a big dragon that can kill you with ease. So perception is also something that I do want to have, because sometimes in real life we do have creatures that are small but they can make really crazy and really scary sounds, but they're just small herbivore creatures that are walking around. And I do also intend on having, you know, that in the game. Not also, you know, we have ambience, which ambient sound, it's also something that needs to be done.
Yeah, totally.
And then we have world events. And then we have Jaren.
Yes, it's about the ambient sound, since the game revolves about you experience yourself as a dragon flying around and
Mm-hmm.
roaring to the forest. Is very good to have a very deep and immersive sound design for the ambience. So like when you're in the forest, you really hear yourself that you're close to nearby trees. You're hearing the wind through the bushes and
Mm-hmm.
through the trees itself. So it's nice that, or when you're high above the clouds, for example, you don't hear nothing but the sound of the wind. It's
Because
very good to have
I'm a big fan of sound, and I'm a big fan of ASMR. So while you're flying, I do want to have that kind of white noise, you know, of the ambience, wings flapping, you know, and you kind of go into that
Mhm.
state of feeling like you're flying, you're feeling good. You can hear like the dragon sound doesn't really need to be loud, but you can have like a small ground to, so that the dragon kind of feels alive, because I don't want the dragon to just flap its wings and you just hear the wind and flapping. That's it. You can kind of see him. Oh, my bird just flew into the window. So
We need to record the bird flapping wings to use as the dragon.
yeah, she's on top of the curtains now. So the whole idea is to kind of make it so that the world feels alive. So the environment itself needs to have impact when you're not doing anything, so you can kind of feel how the map is feel where you are. So if you're in the snow, you can have the feeling that you're kind of walking in the snow and feel like cozy and stuff like that, almost like when you play Minecraft. And you know, soundtrack of Minecraft is really iconic and really
Yeah,
nostalgic.
totally.
But also, if you try to, induce sound or make your dragon, scream and roar, you need to make it so that you feel like your dragon is screaming and roar and has impact on it, because I don't want it to sound like you roar and the roar sounds come from behind you or on the other side, but you're like on the left, you're in the sound is coming on the right.
Yeah, totally
And
can lose all the immersion.
yeah, so immersion is the main thing.
Hmm.
So actually, birds fleeing when you land and stuff like that is something that I do intend on having into the game. So there will be, for example, sound cues. There will be some animals that I call it trigger animals that will kind of give your position away. So you might have ducks that can kind of just fly out of the blue if you do enough sound. There might be birds if you roar or if you kind of land. So it will give a little bit of immersion, but those are just to kind of trigger and give your position away if you're trying to be sneaky. So if you see them, you can probably kill them with fire so that you avoid spooking them. But that is also pretty cool. If Jaren wants to come up into the stage, he can. Just want to throw that out there, because developers have the option to come up on stage. And we do have the sniffing sound that I've already shown you. We have the upscaling that Jaren is working on. And like I said, if you guys want this build, it's popular demand. If a lot of you ask for it, I do think Jaren can release it. But until we have all of the 5 animations ready to go, it will take a few weeks. So once we have the 5 animations and the sounds match those 5 animations, then yes, we will release to the public, but we will take a few weeks. When I say few weeks, probably 3 weeks or 4. Or maybe 5, who knows? Because it will depend on how good the animation is, because if it's good, then we can keep the animator and then he can do the other animations. If it's bad, then we have to find a animator to do the dragon movement, which, like I stated, it is pretty difficult to do or to find currently.
Yeah, I can begin to imagine how difficult it is to make dragon animations. It must be a really specific animator. So.
The thing is, it's you either have the money or you either have the luck.
Yeah.
You have to have the luck to find somebody who loves to do creature animations. But a lot of them might be like, yeah, I know how to do it, but it's really complicated, and making humans animation is easier. So we're gonna like this one. I'm spending $40 per animation because the only reason is he said that dragon animations are difficult. That's why I'm just paying more. It's not because he wants to, it's just because making dragon animations are a pain on the ass. So that's why he's charging more. Because if I asked him like a human animations, I would probably pay less.
He doesn't have like a a real size dragon to make a
He
reference
did
to.
he did animations for dragons because he showed me. But like I
Oh
said,
yeah, nice.
the animation will come sometimes somewhere in Monday, segunda, terça, por aí.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna pay the $40 that he ons, but like I said again, if the animation is good and I think that he did a great job, then we are going to do the other animations. But if the flying animation is kind of bad and not really worth the 40 bucks, then we're gonna find a different animator, and that will take more time.
Got it.
Because he needs to animate the whole dragon. When I say animation, is he needs to make that the dragon has life. It's not that basic animation where you flap your wings and move your tail. You're gonna have to make it so that the dragon feels like it's alive, so that the dragon's kind of, maybe if you're not moving him with the camera, he can kind of look left and right or do something.
Some
idle animations while you're flying. And then you have the webbing for the wings that need to kind of move. And then you have the scales, which the scales are animated by hand. So he needs to animate each and one individual scale so that it gives that flapping sensation that the dragon has. So he needs to animate that also. And of course the legs and stuff like that. But the thing is, while the dragon is on the ground, we don't really need the scales to move. We can just make them static. So, but when it comes to flying, he only needs to kind of make the animation once and then copy and paste the animation for the scales, which I do think will be the problem. But once he does the animations for the scale, for the for the movement that you guys are looking at, then it will be easy to implement.
Yeah, I think maybe creating the animation blueprint for the dragon itself, it's a lot of time consuming as well. City called.
Because this dragon had a lifting animation, and it had a landing animation, but Jaren took out because it was really wonky. So let me just take a look at the YouTube questions. When will be the Kickstarter? The Kickstarter will happen when everything is ready. There will be different types of species, yes. So the two species that I do plan on having in the beginning for Steam is Wyvern and the Eastern Dragon. Then you're gonna have the Drakes, and then you're gonna have the Wyerms, the Basilic, the Orc, and you know, all of those types that are in the folklore. What did you decide to make a dragon game? So the reason why I decided to make a dragon game is because a lot of people know me for animal games. They don't really know me for dinosaur games, although I do gameplay. I do cover them. But there are a lot of animal games coming out. you have a lot of dinosaur games out there, and a lot of dinosaur games are being worked on currently. When it comes to animal games, you also have a lot. You have Way of Animals, you have Primal Earth, you have The Hunted, and you might have a few that probably miss my thought. But if you count dragon games, and when I say dragon game is, I'm talking about open world survival game, just like The Isle. You currently have one, which is Days of Dragon. That's the only dragon game out there, and a lot of people have a lot of problem when it comes to that game. Of course, you'll have Dragon Twin. The Dragon Twin, if I'm not mistaken, unless he decides to change things, it is a game that will be focused on single player, and it's a dragon riding game. While our game is dragon game, basically. You start, you grow, you survive, and that's basically it for the simple terms, but it will be more than that. There will be a lot of stuff to do PvE wise, because I'm trying to make it PvE focus a tiny bit, so that people have stuff to do on the PvE aspect besides just flying around, so you can kind of explore, kind of fight, kind of get some rewards, kind of, you know, learn how to fly, learn how to hunt, learn how you know, where to hit, how to hit, the vulnerabilities, you know, stuff like that. I don't really count Draconia as a dragon survival game, because Draconia is more of a dragon MMO RPG. So in Draconia, you kind of play as you're playing an MMO RPG, like Lost Ark or Blade and Soul or something. So you kind of have quests, you kind of have to craft, you kind of can explore, do missions, create your own base, you know, gather stones, and you have that inventory system, which for me doesn't really make sense, because you're a dragon. Why are you having an inventory system? But Draconia is a dragon MMORPG. It's not a dragon survival game. We'll be able to customize out skins. No. You'll be able to probably customize your dragon at some extent, but skins itself will be coming in a form of DLCs. There will also be skins that will be obtainable by achievements from Steam for free. So if you do like a very difficult, you know, achievement, like, I don't know, like eat 500 cows, you know, you can get a skin. Or if you do something that can kind of reward you, and then you get a free skin for doing so. And those skins won't really be obtainable by paying. So there will be DLC skins, there will be Patreon and Kickstarter skins that will only be exclusive for people who have donated early and support the game early, and won't be available anywhere else. But choosing colors, of course, it will be implemented, so you can kind of have the customization. You can kind of customize with the color palettes. I'm almost saying, like, when you say customize your skin, it's customizing every single bit and part of your dragon. But you will have like the default colors and patterns that you can kind of choose. Then if you want something pretty, you know, good, for example, like a dragon with armor, or a dragon with this and that looks this and this way, it will only come from DLC, and it will only be cosmetic. So you might see dragons with armors and stuff like that, or even a few things, but that's just purely cosmetic. It won't affect any gameplay, and we won't have, you know, pink dragons and bright colors, you know, dragons flying around. That's not what we're gonna have it. But having, for example, this wyvern, you will have probably, for example, DLC, a skin DLC for this wyvern, but instead of him being, you know, kind of a fiery type and horns and stuff like that, he might have, you know, broken stuff, or maybe a few scars, or even a different look or a different face, etc, etc. Bubblegum lizards, yeah. So we're trying to maintain realism.
Okay, everyone, I will head out here. My lunch is coming, so I need to to have dinner. It's almost 10 o'clock here. But nice to meet you all. It's great to be here. Great to be contributing to the project, and whatever suggestions you may have, whatever feedback you may have on the sound, you can send that. I will be glad to hear and address them. Thanks a lot, Capo,
Thank you
for
for
having me
being
over.
here. Thank you for being here. Bom
Good night,
apetito.
everyone. Bye, guys. Valeu. Boa noite.
Valeu.
Obrigadão. Bye.
Bye bye. So now I'm gonna transition to Discord, answer a few questions on Discord. So we might have more wind, different wind sounds could be done. So Jan worked with procedural animations. That's basically what he did with this dragon. So the animations are done by procedural animations. Eventually, you know, I can afford the animation. The thing is, you don't really want to just pay everything, you know, and then I have to survive on noodle cups for the rest of the year. Because, you know, I have to pay the animator, I have to pay Darren, I have to pay the sound designer, I have to pay the concept artist, you know, and when we launch, or when we're gonna launch a Patreon, there will be a few arts. So, and the Kickstarter will be, they will have a lot of concept arts for Kickstarter, a lot. How is PvP going to be punishing? Would I be able to lose, say, 5 hours worth of progress because I met an elder as a juvenile or something? Or would it be able to respawn with my character? So, it will be punishing. It will be punishing. That's the idea of making a dragon game and a hardcore dragon game. You as a juvenile will die and you will have to restart from scratch. Yes, it will. A lot of people won't like it. It's bad. But there will be an item available for... I can make it for any dragon, but there will be an item available that can be obtainable by fighting the exile creatures, or if you're lucky enough to find it laying around somewhere in the map, that if you die, you won't lose your dragon. But you have to find it or obtain it, but it will be difficult. But if you get it, you can kind of maybe grab it, share it with your friends, and if you die, you won't lose your dragon. The reason why I'm making it a permadeath is because I don't want people to just go in and just do PvP and then this becomes a PvP game and the survival aspect will just get thrown out of the window because people just gonna go in with their adults, fight, die, but they won't lose progress. They will just still be adults or sub-adults, just like Path of Titans. So you will die if you get fined. So that's the survival aspect. The game won't be easy, but at the same time, you will have a item that will make it so that you don't lose your dragon if you die. So if I donate, I can get a skin that is only for donators. So currently you can donate. You will get the early supporter tag. And to do that, you can donate. Minimum to get the tag is $5, €5. But in Patreon, if you donate a certain amount, yes, you will get a role on Discord, and you also will get a skin for that donation. Because like I said, there will be tiers for donations, so people will have tiers for having skins, and then you might have a tier to have a statue of you on the game on display for everybody to see. Or you can even have a village name or even a castle name a bayou, but it needs to kind of fit the theme, so you can't really have like a XDXD name and we just put it there though. So this village is called XDXD. So you have to kind of have a cool name for a village or castle, but that will cost a lot, just so people know. Is it possible to have more than one slot to create a dragon? It will probably yes. You will have 2 slots, and that's it. I'm not gonna put more than 3 slots if I decide to make it 2 slots, but it will be just 2 slots maximum. So 2 slots, I think it's a sweet spot. I don't want to have more than 2 slots because I do think people will be like, probably you might get bored of playing with this dragon and then you want to switch to another one. Then yes, you can have another dragon to play. So I can make it 2 slot, but I don't want to make it 5 slots because then it will be just a complete mess. 2 slot per server. Because we're trying to reduce the server code. Instead of having, you know, a dedicated server for our game, it's just gonna be server bound, so it's gonna be per server. If we get like a lot of funding, then we can just add the ability to kinda host our own servers and have the ability so that you can kind of migrate your dragon to other servers. But that is only gonna happen if funding goes really, really well. So like a totem of undying in Minecraft. Yeah, something like that, yes. Have settings in the creation of the world. I don't know what you mean by that. Are you thinking of on doing breeding systems like Days of Dragons where stats are dependent on parent stats and the whole egg system? I can't really talk about breeding systems. I don't really know much about the Dave and Dragon breeding system, how it works. But Jaren's not really a big fan, as you know, of a breeding system. He thinks that's not really necessary, but we will have eventually. So I'm just gonna read here the YouTube comments. Can you tell the requirements for the game, please? So there is no requirements as of right now, unless Jaren knows the requirement. But you can play the game on Steam Deck with 68 frames per second. So the requirements won't be that harsh. But at the same time, I don't want people to play at low to get advantage, so they can take off the trees and rocks and grass. But you will be able to play with in RTX 2000 ish probably, or 1060 maybe. Are you going more realistic or fantasy? I'm going more realistic with a pinch of fantasy, because we can't really make things 100% realistic, so we have to kind of go with the fancy or fantasy style. But the fantasy needs to be something plausible, because there won't be magic in the game. So it's something that you can kind of think, be like, oh yeah, this could work if you make it like this, instead of, you know, a glowing stone gives you power and gives you this and that. You know, that's not gonna happen. It needs to be something that kind of makes sense, but it doesn't really need to be real. That's why the fantasy part will be important, but it's most realistic aspect. Realistic, like stem drain while flying, you fall, you start to drown if your head's underwater for long. Yes, that of course that will be implemented. Fantasy has a rainbow tail or aurora borealis. So aurora borealis we probably can have, but having a rainbow tail, not really. But the save slots, will it be similar to the Isle where you have only 2 distinct dragons, but you can switch out pellets? Yes, it will be something like that, yes. So you have the default palettes, color palettes, so you can kind of switch, you know, have the default skins, so you can kind of tune in if you want them darker or not. But then, if you have a skin, you know, you can slap that baby on and fun. Let me see Discord. Also, if players are allowed to host servers, would be able to control growth rate of the growth rate of dragons. So the growth rate of dragons, although Jaren wants to give total accessibility, like total things for server owners, I'm against a few stuff and growth rate systems. I don't think server hosts will have the ability to do a lot of stuff, but you might have like just like a tiny bit more faster. It doesn't become tedious. So it won't be like, you won't have servers that in 30 minutes or 20 minutes you will have a fully grown adult dragon. That won't happen. You'll have servers that will be slightly faster, just slightly faster. Instead of taking probably 1 hour and a half, it can take 1 hour or 2 hours, and it will take, you know, 1 hour and a half. But it won't be as such as in 10 minutes, 20 minutes, you have grown from a baby to an adult, and that's it. Because like some of you might know, I am a content creator, so sometimes the thing that sells and the thing that gives content for YouTubers is role-playing aspect. Although we are not, you know, Jaren is not really focused on the role-playing aspect, me as a content creator, role-playing aspect for storytelling is essential. But role-playing will not be a priority. There will be people who play games for role playing. There will be people who play games just for the PvP, and there will be people who just play the games just to go in and talk with people. But as someone who plays these types of game and does content for a living, I know the ins and outs and the flaws when it comes to certain aspects. So there are a few things that I do am trying to avoid. Hello. Without hate, without lies. I thought on add a realistic injury system, aka like Metal Gear Solid. We do plan on adding something realistic for injuries, but not yet. Because on our status, you can see that we have fracture, we have stun, daze, unconscious, poison, illness, oxygen, bleeding, which bleeding will be like light bleed, and then we're gonna have heavy bleed, which is gonna be pretty bad. And then you'll have options to stop that bleeding because you don't really want to lose your dragon. So there will be something like that, yes. The fire seems to hit the cow, but it doesn't really hit the cow. Yeah, but the fire system or the fire effect needs to kind of be adjusted a tiny bit. Because I do want limb targeting to be something that you can do in this game, but like I said, we have to do a lot. So you can kind of specifically attack specific areas to do more damage. You can attack the tail, you can attack the wings, you can attack the legs, you can attack the neck, the body, the face, and each separate thing will deal separate damage. That's why this is implemented, so you can have like a precise attack, or to do precise attack when you're trying to bite. And also fire and stuff like that. But I don't want to make it a lot punish so that if you kind of attack the wings, now you have a broken wing, now you can't fly, now you have to wait to fly again. You can't, that's not really gonna happen. The only punishable thing I can make is having a broken wing, and you can't really fly that fast. You fly slow, and that's it. This won't be free. If this was free, my dear good sir, the only free part that this game will be is milestone 1 and 2 for the prototype build. That's the only thing that will be free. Higher stamina drain? Probably. How much will it cost? I don't know. I can't give you guys, can't tell you how much it costs because the game is still in the prototype phase. It's not even out, basically. It's not really even out. Yeah, so the idea, the first idea was to just make a Kickstarter and then start with that. But then I started thinking better and I'm like, well, Patreon probably should be the first thing to do and then move to Kickstarter to kind of get like a tiny big budget. But like Patreon would help funding a few things and pay for a few things that are really necessary for the beginning. And then Kickstarter would be something more like, oh, if you want to do something more extravaganza, you know, you can kind of see what Kickstarter can have, and do. And the only way to kind of put out the game out there is to have people making content and reviewing the game. So that's why having a early build to give them, it's really important. Because we might be talking here, we might be we might be happy and all hyped up, but at the end we can probably, if we launch Patreon, we can only have like 5 to 10 Patreons, which would be kind of bad. So for that, we will need to improve the animations of flying and the overall feeling, etc. Maybe add a few sneaky stuff that Jaren already knows of, so that people will be, more hyped to support the game, because a lot of people won't really be able to support financially, but they should be able to support it other ways, either talking about the game, either making videos, either reviewing, either sharing or giving ideas. Is there a nighttime? No, there is no nighttime. That will only come on milestone 3, which is the day and night cycles or the dynamic weather. And also, for those of you who haven't seen, this is the ascent system, which Jaren will change because he wants to make it extra realistic. And reminding that Jaren can also jump into the stage to talk, but it doesn't seem that he wants to. He's just lurking. Yeah, he's just lurking. So the idea is to, a lot of the games, when they are being worked on, they launch a Patreon, they show you pictures. Most of it is just screenshots or maybe arts or just a tiny bit of gameplay or whatever. And a lot of the times the game takes time to kind of go out to the public. We're not doing that here. What we're doing here is giving people a what's it called, a taste of what you will see in the game. So you will be able to play it, you'll be able to test it, you'll be able to see it, you'll be able to kind of give your own opinion and not be like a myth or something that we said that it's going to happen, but it never happened because we never showed.
Mm-hmm. Well, howdy.
Howdy there, partner. Howdy.
I was managing multiple calls, so wasn't ready to hop in yet. I wanted to make a statement on the idea of funding, and this comes from my experience working for different startup indie projects, and when it comes to doing funding for those, and watching the other Dragon games have been released and gotten Kickstarters. So what I don't like about a Kickstarter is when you're kickstarting a game that hasn't been designed yet. Because what happens? Let's say you have $100,000 that you get from the Kickstarter, and you go and you make the game design document. It's made, and then you go and make that. And to make the game design document as it's written, it's going to cost you $100,000, right? So you go, you do it, you make the game design document, you've spent the $100,000, and then once it's done, you realize there's in practice versus on paper problems of the game design document. You make the design document and you realize a lot of the mechanics don't actually play well. Or some of them don't play well with each other, or maybe they're not fun. So now you need to redo a lot of the designs you had in the document because you don't actually know they're fun until you try them. So,
That's true.
but you've already spent $100,000 making the game, so now you're out of money. The Kickstarter had just paid to make a super specific design document that you don't even know if it's going to be fun or not until you try it. And then it's not, and then you wasted money. So usually when it comes to proper game development in the industry, people are given a large budget. The whole studio gets an entire budget. They're not working on 100,000 specifically. They have a budget of 500,000 and they aim for 100,000. Because after that 100,000, they still have plenty of more money to spend and can redo things and try things again and again and again and again and a bunch of money until everything's actually perfect. So doing a Kickstarter would set us up for doom, especially if we set it up this early, because we would run out of budget. We would run out of the money you guys gave us because we would make the doc and then realize some mechanics aren't good and need to redo them and end up being, screwed. It's not good. I've seen that happen with other games. It's not a good one to do. So starting with Patreon, especially early on like this, makes way more sense because we're not starting with a budget of hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're starting with a budget of a few bucks. We're going $1 at a time here, spending money only on exactly us figuring out the mechanics. So we don't end up blowing that much money on a full doc. Just on what we're developing specifically. So hopefully Patreon, eventually at some point will start giving a good amount of funding. If it started pulling in over $1,000 a month in any regards, that would move development along really fast, and that would have us enough money to try all sorts of stuff in order to make sure the game is actually perfect and fun. I hope to be able to get there. Now, I don't see too much of a reason to do a Kickstarter after the Patreon, because if the Patreon is successful enough, we don't need a Kickstarter. The Patreon can make the whole rest of the game. So we'll have to see what the finances look like towards the end. But most likely, I would wage a bet that we would probably be able to manage to go from Patreon to Steam release. But we'll see. I'm not going to promise nothing there. See, will there be different phases in the end game, or will you try to work towards that? Both. I mean, as we develop the game, the more money we pull in, the more dragons we're going to make as we build the game, and there's a lot of dragons we do want to make. I absolutely would not want to, only have 2 dragons for the first however many months or years this game is taking to make, and then that's the only 2 for forever. Until it's last second to get a game release and then we add a bunch. I wouldn't want to do that. Make dragons as we go. That makes way more sense. Especially with us doing Patreon and Kickstarter, we would be able to do that because we would be able to make 1 dragon at a time and be chilling. Any way to help to support without a membership? Would there be a place to donate directly? I think there might already be a place to do that. Kato?
Yes, there is. There is a channel below called One to Join the Project where people can send their applications, and below that you have the donation that you can donate any amount. But if you want to have the early supporters tag, which is the black one, you have to donate a minimum of $5. That's it. But if you can't donate, financially wise, ideas, spreading out the word, it's plenty of help.
We'll
Oh.
we'll have Patreon sometime soon. Just didn't I definitely don't want to do it too soon because I don't want to make people to actually genuinely pay to get access to something that has nothing inside of it. Like, that's awful. That's terrible. I hate that so much. I don't like it when other early access games do that, where you pay money to have nothing. I don't like that at all. Now, obviously, we're going to be a little dry in the beginning because we're still adding mechanics. But the thing is when it comes to at least the programming side of things, it's fast. We're moving along really quickly. This hasn't taken us any time at all to put together what we have so far, and what we've put together so far is probably the harder parts of it because it's the dragon flight and making the dragon comfortable and work fantastic. Once we start getting into the multiplayer, it's going to get a lot more fun. Obviously, it's going to get more complicated for me because multiplayer is all sorts of wild. But yeah, it's going to ramp up real quick.
I just had an idea to write it down.
Need to do more for controller support. Controller support is already working the way I want it to, since I was able to package the game and load it up on the Steam Deck. Obviously, I was able to play it. There's just a few mappings that I need to change, and then it's all hunky-dory. Controller support seems good so far. Different species have different sizes? Yeah, absolutely. They talked about different performance settings and not wanting low to make it so dragons are revealed versus other dragons. No, I wouldn't be doing anything like that. Ideally, large foliage has the same render distance, no matter what graphic settings you use. The difference being, though, is what LOD of that model you're seeing. So, LODs, for those who don't know, is when you're far away from a 3D model, it's swapped out with a lower resolution version of itself. And that is already happening across all of the trees and all of the plants in this scene, including the bushes. So, all the bushes and stuff are still there, but it's just lower poly from a distance. And that hopefully will stay approximately consistent across all players. The cost of performance mostly comes from things like shadows and the draw calls. But since the plants are running through Unreal Engine's foliage system, they're actually really, really good for performance because they're all instanced and using black magic. So there's nothing intense about the foliage density other than shadows, really. But I did my best to tune that. So, if you end up setting yourself to low settings, really what it's going to do is it's going to pull in the shadows to be a lot closer to you and be a lot lower resolution. So it's not casting shadows on so many plants at the same time, because that's the real performance cost. So since you just entered low, go to low graphics mode.
Give me a second. Gotta restart it because I think my PC is.
Oh.
It's going bad. Like I said, one thing that I didn't really like is how blurry sometimes it can look with the upscaling.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of has that little. The trees have that little blurry effect.
Yeah, so that will need to be based on your own settings. Eventually we would be able to let you tune the upling yourself or turn it off completely. But momentarily, I don't have an entire graphics menu, so we just got a few presets that I'll have to do for now.
So this is low upscaling.
Let's see, so go into low graphics mode, yeah? Show you how some of this works, if this is working right. So look across the tree line next to you. Yeah, go ahead and fly and look down while you're in low settings. See. Nope, that doesn't look the way it should. We need to make sure that you actually have the latest pull, because I don't know if you do, but there should be less visible shadows right now. I don't think your low mode is working. I do have a build of the game that I can begin pushing onto the repository so that you can actually load the compiled build, and that'll keep the game looking consistent between the both of us. I'll just have to submit it. It's like 3 gigs right now, but it's not gonna be so heavy later. So there's some settings I gotta enable in the engine for building that will filter out what assets are actually being used and what doesn't need to be mounted into the build. So that 3 gigs should only be like a few hundred megabytes instead. I take care of that, but right now, before I do anything else, it is 3 gigs, so I'll have to push that this time when you have time, because it's going to take a bit for you to download.
No, I do have time.
Okay, let's see if I can start submitting it, but I don't know if that'll mess with your internet.
I have all the
3
time in the world.
3 gigs is 3 gigs is a lot for how little is here, and that's because the engine is mounting a whole ton of assets that we're not even using in this scene. That's why. It's very simple to actually fix that. We haven't done it yet. Very, very simple. Very shrimpable. I mean, I could do that before I release the prototype, which I'm probably going to do over the next day or so, is tighten up the assets that go into the builds so that it's a small size for you guys to play test with. Which, you know what? I'm not doing anything right now, so I'm actually going to do that right now. That's what I'm going to work on. I'm actually going to go shrink the file size. I'm not going to submit yet. We'll do that in a bit. And yeah, there's a lot of good ways to get an Unreal Engine game's file size down, especially because of Unreal Engine supporting really good compression tools. You're able to get assets really tiny. And this isn't like, and this isn't like Call of Duty or anything where we're trying to have 8K textures at your toes at all times, everywhere you walk on hundreds of thousands of objects. That's completely unnecessary. We're gonna keep it pretty tuned down. It's like when you're a dragon, your camera perspective is actually a pretty good distance from small objects. So small objects don't need to be that high resolution, because if they were, you wouldn't see it. It would just cost you more performance and texture memory for no reason. So we can drop the resolution of a lot of things and nobody would be able to tell the difference. Which is a trick when it comes to game development. It's basically you want to figure out texture resolutions based on how far away your camera is going to be from them, and that goes for model resolutions as well. It's all about how far your camera is going to be from the object, and your camera's pretty far for a lot of the part. Now, if you're playing a small baby dragon, you are going to be closer to the ground, so I'm not going to turn everything into mud. But it just doesn't need to be insane or anything like it is with games like Call of Duty. That's excessive. So there's a sweet spot to be found, and like I said, Unreal Engine comes with really good texture compression, so we can get it down a lot.
Well, tell me something. When it comes to the flying, while pressing W, is there any impact on the dragon itself when it comes to the movement?
When you're pressing W, what you mean?
So I'm taking here a look, and for example, if I try to do a turn to the right, you know, the dragon itself doesn't really. He kind of seems like he's just losing momentum, so I have to kind of press space. So the idea or the question is, if I press W, if the dragon is programmed so that he goes straight. Because for example, if I'm going straight, if I press D, then I should be able to kind of fly to the right instead of kind of hovering, if that makes sense.
No, it doesn't make sense to me at all. We'll have to build up a diagram on what you're talking about.
Strafing left to right, kind of like strafing. So, you know, if you press W, you should fly forward. You do fly forward. But the flying forward here doesn't really look like flying forward. Because if you're looking at the third perspective, it looks like the dragon is kind of like diagonal. Now he's laying down, but
it's because you're gaining momentum first. You don't have to lean super harshly forward if you're only going 1 mile an hour, so you don't.
Yeah, maybe it's...
You gain speed.
I have to play with the camera. Just when you do turns to left and right, it doesn't really have that feeling of... But this has to do with animation, needs to have more flapping.
You could always have more wing flapping.
Just when you do this, it seems more that he's gliding to the left and to the right. Are we? Will you add swimming? Yes. Will there be a first person? No. Not.
We can cram in a small first person feature just for those who really want to use it, but I don't know if that will ever be a default feature turned on. That might be some... So we've had a lot of conversations about first person. First person doesn't really work well. It's like, yes, we can implement it. Yes, we can turn it on. but the dragon is heavily animation based. So if your camera is attached to his head, it's just gonna bob around like crazy. And if anyone's stuck using that mode, if they're stuck using that mode, it would make them motion sick really quickly. And it's you don't see anything. Like when you're in first person mode, it's because we tried it. Your head is so far forward on the dragon's body that you don't really see your own body unless you're looking behind you. So you're just kind of a floating camera staring at the environment, and you don't have any dragon behind you. So it's like, okay, how does this add to the gameplay of the game? It really doesn't. I mean, I'm sure some people might like it, so I might cram the feature in there anyway. But it's very purposeless, is what I'm saying. It doesn't add very much at all to the game. Now I gotta figure out why Unreal Engine decided to crash when I went to change settings.
But the thing is, you don't need a first person view when you have your right click. The reason why we have the right click is so that you have more precise to pick up stuff and look down and yada yada yada. This is technically your first person view. Because, for example, if you're flying in third person and if you look down, your dragon will dive into the ground. So if you want to look for AI or look for movement, you can just press right mouse button and just look down, and you can see everything, and you don't dive. The reason why this is implemented is precisely that. To have a more of a precise look, a little bit more of a close-up to your dragon, not really give you that motion sickness when you're flying. So the right click is basically to have more of a precise when you're trying to do combat. If you're trying to bite something specifically, you will use the aim so they can kind of move. You try and bite or use your fire, but you can do it on third person also, but it will be something that you either get like very good at hitting stuff in third person, or you're kind of gonna use the right click. What is currently being worked on, like what's next? So Zarin,
what's being worked on and what's next? Well, right now I want to tune a few things before I hand the prototype to you guys, as well as wait on a couple of animations for a few of the features that are already implemented. Like we have drinking water implemented with the status effects, and you'll get thirsty and whatnot. But we need an animation for drinking water, and we need a better animation for picking up animals and eating them. So, all the systems are basically there, but they just don't have any animations, so they can't look right at all. Non-functional. Wait on that. And then after we do that, we need to basically set up essential prototypes for a lot of the other game mechanics that we want to have. So an important part of this is a weather system across the world, because we want weather to drastically affect the way the game plays, and have it influence people's social experiences in the game. So we're going to work on that. Yeah, don't worry. I need to hook back up the food consumption, adding to your food stat, because the original system was programmed to... See, I don't have a good phrasing for this. The original programming from whoever programmed it so that whenever you ate an animal, they had to write an entire custom script entirely for that one animal to be eaten. So if we end up having hundreds of different species of things for you to eat, we would have to rewrite from scratch hundreds of different lines of code to eat all these hundreds of animals. That is absurd. So I went and replaced all that programming with something agnostic. So it's able to detect what is and what isn't an animal, and it's one line of code, and that one line of code can eat all of them. So now I need to attach that one line of code to the status system, so it will add to your hunger bar as well. Previously in the programming, the cow and rabbit were always on the dragon's code at all times. There is always a cow and a rabbit in your mouth 100% of the time. And it was originally programmed so that it would just make the two models appear or disappear, but you're always carrying that on your player code. And imagine having to have 100 different animals all physically on your dragon at the same time at all times, and you're sorting through hundreds of them to turn them on and off as you play. No. I redid that. That is a no-no. It needs to be agnostic. It is agnostic now. It just grabs what it detects as an animal and it just puts it in your mouth. It doesn't matter what animal it is, as long as it qualifies as edible and small enough. Yeah, so the original programming was very monolithic and not recommended at all. There was a lot of things that were running every single frame that had like a ton of work being done every single frame across the AI, across the player. There were like, there's just way too much being done every single frame. I had to undo a lot of that. Like, there was a lot of systems in here that only needed to happen like once, but it was being triggered every single frame and checking every single frame, which doesn't make any sense at all. Like the animal spawning. The animals only need to spawn on like a few second intervals if they're going to spawn in the world at all. But instead they were running every single frame. So on every frame it was checking through and handling the spawning of dozens and dozens and dozens of animals. And originally there was 80 total animals that would spawn across every single frame. As soon as you start the game, and your frame rate would drop immediately. And I was like, no, absolutely not. Get that out of here. Now it's actually waiting on intervals to spawn them one at a time, and it's not spawning 80 of them anymore. And the programming of them wasn't even set up to be optimized either, so they were using the default movement component that Unreal Engine comes with. And the default movement component is really expensive. It does a lot of super, super fancy math and checks of the collisions of your environment, so that a player would be the one who's walking, and they would hit and collide with the environment super smooth and fancy-like, and step up on ledges and step down on ledges and have crouching abilities, etc., etc. But a cow doesn't need all that. Like, at all. So... yeah, that was taking a huge bite out of performance. So momentarily, I had changed that existing player movement system to quit navigating using the physics of the environment and to instead just follow the navigation mesh, which is way simpler and way cheaper. I have it set to that momentarily, and later on, we're going to replace it with our own character movement that will be even cheaper than that. So the frame rate, since I've joined the project, I have tripled, if not quadrupled, the frame rate depending on what you're doing in the game. It is a lot better now, and there's more I want to do.
One thing that I have to ask is to try and make the shift a tiny bit more like faster. Because when you press shift, you don't really feel like you're flapping.
Oh, I still haven't implemented that. Been going back and forth working on other mechanics. I still don't have your sprint mode. We need a good spot to write a to-do list, because my rear end having ADD, I'm going to forget the tiny things, so I need something I can always look at every day and be like, oh, that.
Okay.
So we need something to start taking notes.
We can even do on the one that we have currently, the GDD.
Mm-hmm.
You can do like a to-do list and you can scratch it everything. It's just because I like to press shift and it gives you like the effect, but it doesn't really make your dragon fly faster. So I'm like, okay,
okay, I'll go ahead and do that on the GDD. I'll do that on the prototype list.
Speed.
To do.
Will different animals give different food benefits, or feel your hunger more? And what about more wing flap on landing? Wing flap on landing, we need animation for that. Currently we don't have. Different animals will give different food benefits because we will have a diet system, and if you're big, then you'll need to eat something that is big. It won't really benefit you as an adult dragon to kill a juvenile because it won't really give you any food. So if you're killing juvenile, you're just killing for the pleasure of it, or just to kind of give you just a few extra seconds or even minutes of life if you're like in that dire state of hunger. If you want to eat good, you have to find the axle creatures, or you have to kill another dragon. That's at least the idea. Do you have the build already compiled, Jared?
Yes.
Could you either send me on Google Drive?
We could still use the Perforce server to send it.
But I can't compile it on my computer.
You don't need to compile it. You'll have the packaged exe through Perforce. You could just load it.
That's so I can kind of go to a friend of mine.
Yeah. Since the Perforce server is on your computer, I'll literally be uploading it to your computer, the packaged ready to go version, and then you could just send that off wherever, because I don't have drive space to upload anything anywhere. But I just did a rebuild, and I only changed one thing, and we went from 3 gigs to 1.9 gigs. Still more to do, though.
The dragons will be able to grow to different sizes. I do think that the Western, or in this case the European dragon, will be the most big of all of them. Not really sure. But you will grow, you know, a lot of people don't want to grow from an egg, so you're gonna spawn as a juvenile. Eat, survive, dodge a few things here and there. Because Jaren wanted to implement a growing system that shows that you can actually grow. The world building, I don't know how things will work because there is a lot of world designers or designers overall that we can find, but the challenge itself when it comes to designing the map, I want it so that the player does it in a first or even third person's perspective from a human. Not from a dragon, so you won't build a map while you're a dragon, so we kind of could do it so that it kind of gives the vibe that you're big, and at the same time I do want to, you know, give you guys an option or maybe scroll around the map as a human to see how the ambience really feels. Because once you're a dragon, you're not really gonna take a lot of time just to look onto details and stuff like that. But I'm a man who loves detail. Maybe you can implement some caves, so there could be some dragons dens for grouping up. There will be caves and there will be dungeons. But beware of searching or exploring these dungeons and caves. Oh, let me read that. So will you be able to swoop down and pick an animal up with your claws and eat it mid-air? I mean, I've already talked with Jaren. So the ability to swoop down and pick an animal is going to be there. Eating mid-air? That's animation stuff.
Yeah, we can do it all. You just need animations. Animations are tough to get your hands on, especially if you need enough of them.
Mm-hmm. Because I have to say, I don't really see any game that has a ability of you just flying and scooping animals. I haven't seen that in any game. You have kind of like the Isle where you can play as that dinosaur that flies, but you have like like fish flying in the air and you can bite and grab a fish. That's basically it. Having like a proper system that kind of grabs, and it needs to be made so that you know how to time it correctly. Because I think that needs to be like something that you need to be skilled. So if you fail, you're gonna hit the ground and you're gonna hurt yourself pretty bad. But if you succeed, then you can grab it. Well, what I call a drive-by. Ark does with their dragons. So Ark, I do think dragons on Ark are mods. But I don't really play Ark, but because Ark is not really a dragon survival game, you know. Hey, how far away from having a map are you? A long way. I have a friend that made me a map, but let's just stay by the butt. I didn't know that Ark has it, but you know, having that would be pretty cool. Well, I do have to say that although we want to wait, I think we will end the stream here and hopefully upload it as a sneak peek.
Do what now as a sneak peek?
What you were trying to upload the 3 gigs.
Oh yeah, the packaged game. Yeah, I'm still working on it. I'm just getting it smaller right now. I'll be setting it up soon, which you guys can. I don't know. Because I mean, we could do a video showing the packaged version, but I don't know if you're wanting to release that yet.
If you don't mind, you know, if you have time or if you want to do that, I can stay with you in a call and we can work that out and then show me and see if it's doable to release that.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's stopping us from releasing it besides wanting animations.
Yep.
Yeah.
I told them if people want the build how it is without the animations, you know, if it's popular demand, then why not? But animations will take time. Like I said, it might take 2 weeks, 3 weeks to just implement these animations, and if the animator is really good at making dragon animations. If not, I have to go in and find more people.
All right, well, I managed enough tuning for now, so we went from over 3 gigs to now 1.44.
I mean, I do have space. I have
So, but yeah,
a
we
lot.
cut it in half for now. And I'll see what that is when it's zipped up, because that's total used disk space is 144. But when it's zipped up, it might be even smaller. Yep, the zipped up version is only 1 gig. So that's a massive difference from well over 3 gigs down to 1 gig as a zipped up version. Obviously, once it's unzipped and installed on your computer, it's going to take about 1.4 gigs of space currently, but we can make that smaller. If I want to make it smaller, I need to one by one go through the texture assets that are inside the game and make sure that their compression settings are tweaked and capped. So that's something to do later. But all right, that'll do for now. I'm gonna upload this, and then Tato and I can discuss the release of the prototype for y'all to mess with.
Well, that being said, we're gonna end the live stream. This will be recorded on YouTube, of course, for people who wanted to see and have an idea on where we are. And the next Friday, hopefully we'll have something juicy to show you. If not, we'll always have something to talk about. Either new people will come in, and hopefully we'll have at least, I hope, something juicy to tell you guys or to show.
All right, well, I got a long upload for this because internet's not the fastest thing in the world, so I will talk to you guys later. I'm gonna dip and go play video games while I wait on this. Have a good day, everybody.
Later, J-Wayne. So people, thank you very much for joining. I'll catch you guys in the next live stream. You can always, send people to the YouTube channel to check the live stream if they missed out on the dev stream. Thank you very much.